What up, what up, what up? Welcome back to Lockdown Universe, home of the bizarre, peculiar, and unheard of stories of UFO legend and paranormal lore. Welcome back, welcome back. Today we're going to talk about the real X-Men who have power. That's right, real power, real humans, but they have X-Men-like powers. You may say, Lockdown, you damn lost your mind. Well, you may be right. But actually, we have a previous government worker who worked for DARPA as well as the Office of Special Investigations for the Air Force. And we have guys that were men in black, literally. And they told us about all these X-Men-like characters. Look at, I got all these X-Men characters in my hands, as you can see. If you're watching, I got She-Hulk. She's not an X-Men, but I got a Superman. Well, he's not an X-Men either. And I got, I don't know, whoever this dude is. Just started collecting these Funko Pops characters, and I got like a whole bunch of them, and I just like went like ridiculously crazy over here. I got a whole collection going on. Just started collecting them. Yeah, I got Robin and Iron Man and a few others over there. So I'm gonna start a wall of, collectibles. Why not, right? Might as well have some fun before I die. So, hey, what the hell am I talking about? Real powers. Well, in the past we've talked about individuals who are known as P3s that could take down UFO aircraft with their mind. Basically, they have kind of a three-way system where they have special capabilities. They're particularly selected out by the government through a private selection process that we don't know about. That we don't have the details on, I should say. We know it exists because whistleblowers have told us it exists. But they're not going to put their life on the line and tell us exactly how they do it, because that would be giving up trade secrets, national security secrets. So you might say, hey, they're giving up national security secrets, which is telling us that they have this kind of P3 program, but I don't know. I don't know what they're allowed to say and not. All I know is that Richard Doty's out here on the Gaia program, Cosmic Disclosure, telling us all about it. So I want to cover what he's talking about today. He's actually talking about a brand new program where they use X-Men-like powers to basically implant a thought into their subject's mind. And they're able to also retrieve information from their subject's mind at a remote distance. So as you might remember, they ran the Project Stargate, SCAN-A, Grill Flame, Center Lane, whatever you want to call it, from 1975, I think it was, to 1995. They ran it for 20 years. Nobody wanted it except for the CIA at 95. They kept it for a year, and then the DIA picked it up. The DIA started to create a brand new program that utilized an entirely different way of looking at and manipulating the psychological field and the energetic field and the quantum mechanics field of obtaining information and implanting information. You see, it's not just Professor X with Cerebro in X-Men that can try to find superheroes and mutants and implant thoughts into his enemies, but it's also these guys that we have in the DIA program that are able to do it with 99% accuracy. 99% accuracy. You see, that's what failed in the program with the remote viewing, okay? That's why they quit it, quote unquote. They said, we're quitting it because it's not 100% efficient. Well, that was a lie, because it was pretty efficient. I mean, nothing's ever 100%. I mean, it's pretty hard to do. But why is this off? Turn this on. And here we want English. Yes, there we go. Very good. So they started to develop this totally new way of thinking of implanting these thoughts. They tried it with Saddam. They tried it with a couple other groups, and they weren't super successful at the beginning. So they decided to create their own shit. The DIA is amazing. They're part of DARPA. They're part of creating HARP. They're part of creating scalar weaponry. But what they did is they mapped the brain they hired a neurologist. They mapped the brain, and they found patterns in the brain that were able to train these military individuals to do to basically do psychic implantation. Psychic implantation is kind of what I'm I'm going to copyright that. They developed these new procedures, and in 2007, he says they perfected something called the Thought Project Acquisition. He says it's still classified even today, the actual details of how it all works. He says, but we do know about is that it works in two ways. He says they call these Thought Project Acquisition soldiers. They're all military, some are Air Force, and they call them experiencers. Totally different name, right? They're not special agents. So they sit in front of you, they target, and they project something into your brain that opens up your brain, and then they read it. This is interesting. So basically they're targeting you, they're implanting some whatever, a thought or a journal or article or secret papers, and then they open it up and read it so that it gets stuck in your head. And then it's almost like reverse Inception, where they're stealing thoughts, they're implanting thoughts. Inception was a great movie with Leonardo DiCaprio and Ellen Page before she turned Elliot Page. They had what's Tom Hardy? They had a whole bunch of people in there, and great movie. And what they did was they stole secrets. They stole ideas that corporations wanted. Well, in this case, the military wants to implant an idea. They want a government official to do something they want them to do. So they're using X-Men-like powers in order to do it. They're using everyday people to accomplish this. Now, with remote viewing, what they had to do was they had to clear their mind. They had to get into this meditative state and open up their mind, and then jot down first like the idea of the object they were trying to look at, the smell, the touch, the taste, and eliminate any other pieces of information. They wanted just the solid facts and write them down, and then draw them if you could, or draw the area, or draw the object or the weapon that you were trying to complete. In this case, they're not doing that. They're just implanting ideas into the person's mind, and then they're also reading it while they're there. So they're accomplishing remote viewing plus remote implantation, which is a totally different program than the Project Stargate. Okay, so the reason they decided to use this new method was because it was, again, almost 90 to 99% accuracy. Remote viewing only had like 60 to 80%. He said they did an experiment from Bolling Air Force Base. Well, let's see where Bolling Air Force Base is, 'cause I don't even know. I'm not up on my areas here. Washington, D.C.? Washington, D.C. Okay, perfect. There we go. So going back to Richard Doty, again, who worked for the Office of Special Investigations for the Air Force, he said they did an experiment at Bolling in Washington, D.C., where they had a soccer ball in West Germany, in a facility in West Germany, and they actually were able to read the numbers off of. They read the numbers, and they had names written on the soccer ball, and they were able to read all of the names except for the name that was underneath the ball, where the ball was sitting, so he couldn't see underneath. Even though you're in the ethereal, you're in the ether, he couldn't read the number or the name. So they gave him 99%. In another experiment where the individual was at Bolling and the target was in West Germany, they had the experiencer, which is their name, not a remote viewer, but an experiencer, read an entire document from West Germany. So he was in Washington, D.C., and they had him project to West Germany, and it was a document inside a safe, and the experiencer was able to read the entire document. That's not something that a lot of, or if any, except for maybe Pat Price. Remote viewers were able to do. Pat Price was the best remote viewer. Joe was pretty close, Joseph McMoneagle. But this experiencer who talked to Richard Doty under condition of anonymity stated he was able to read the entire document. That means their methods since the 70s up till 2007 and beyond have vastly improved. And their methods for training have vastly improved. They'll train these individuals for up to a year at bowling, and then they'll start having them do actual projects. And what do they call it? Thought Projection Acquisition, TPA. They don't want to call it remote viewing anymore. It sounds too, I don't know, hippy-dippy 1970s. Now it's TPA, Thought Projection Acquisition. But it was a classified top secret document that was in a safe. And Doty says that's something a remote viewer just simply couldn't do at all. He said the safe was top secret as well. So like the location was even top secret. And they needed a new procedure that was far more advanced than remote viewing to accomplish this. In 2009, they put a training class of these experiencers all together through training at the Bolling Air Force Base, like I was talking about, and it lasted from 2009, June, all the way to June 2010. There was a class of 100, of which 88 graduated. So that's a high graduation number. I mean, 88%, that's pretty high. You would think it'd be like 14% or something ridiculous, but it was 88%. So they do highly classified missions that we don't really know about, he says. He says the reason we know about the basics of it is because we have this guy talking to Richard Doty. So check this. The terminology that they use to project something into somebody's brain is called transspectral projection. Is that what it was? Transspectral projection is what I believe he said. Just want to make sure I got that right. Spectral, wouldn't that be ghostly? I mean, that's what it seems like to me. It seems so bizarre that they have to change the wording, but they're using like UAP instead of UFO now. Oh, I'm sorry, transspectral positioning. Transspectral positioning means that you project something from one point, which is your brain, into the target's brain. And that's the target, right? And they're able to do this, and they can be anywhere. So this is like what we were talking about with like Saddam, right? And we were talking about this with like other leaders. And if they weren't if the U.S. wasn't successful, they'd just take them out. If they couldn't do it back in the day because they weren't able to, or they didn't have the correct protocols in order to achieve their mission, they just take them out in a variety of different ways. See, the thing is that we have the weaponry to take these guys out. We have scalar technology that could wipe these guys out. The problem is that if the enemy knows that it was us, then we could initiate accidentally a World War III, and then mutually assured destruction, nuclear war, and everybody's toast. But if we can do this transspectral positioning and thought projection acquisition, well, good luck trying to blame it on us, because it's all in the ether, right? It's all in the ether. And it's all in the ether, man. And so what they're saying is that they used to use this during interrogation too. So if you had somebody, in like Guantanamo, they could thought project into this person's brain, place something in there, and read it and open up a part of the person's brain that wouldn't be open otherwise. He says they're able to find out Chinese spy satellites. They were able to find out other high top secret piece of information without torture. Now, see, we did torture a bunch of people down in Guantanamo, man. There's pictures of it. These dudes were like naked. They're beating the crap out of them, and he had some like female officer with the thumbs up next to these naked dudes with the hat on or whatever, the bag over their head. Well, we don't want to do that. If we can just gather the information and utilize it, then that would be ideal. That would be more humane. Although might makes right. Might makes right. Not might, but might makes right. Might makes right. So if you have the might, whether it's militarily or spectrally or emotionally or politically, you can win. So if we can do it in a different way, that's great. What's interesting is that this particular episode has Emery Smith in it and Richard Doty. Emery Smith is a master remote viewer, so he's talking to Richard Doty, and Richard Doty's like, yeah, basically saying that Emery Smith's old school remote viewing techniques are out the window and not as accurate. He said, actually, you can take 5 remote viewers, and that's what Emery does. He'll take like 3 to 5 remote viewers, and they'll all view the same subject in a double-blind experiment, so they don't know what the other person's viewing, so they're not preloaded. And they'll come to, like 3 of them will come to an agreement, and then they'll give themselves, with the collection of 3 people giving the same information, 110% accuracy is what he says. But according to Doty and his informant experiencer in this new project, they only want 1 person in the room at a time. They're not going to take 3 or 4 or 5 people and all try to view or manipulate anybody's mind, because it mixes up the signals. Imagine this: you have 5 radios in one room, and you turn them all on to different radio stations. It's going to sound pretty jacked up, isn't it? Now, let's say you have 5 radios, but different brands. Okay, the different brands would be different people, right? Male, female, short, tall, white, black, Hispanic, whatever. And you put them all in a room. You put all these radios in a room, right? Panasonic, Sony, Olympic, whatever. And you put them all in, and you play the same Britney Spears song. You're going to hear the same song, but it's going to come out with a different intonality. Some's going to have more treble, some's going to have more bass, and you're going to hear the same song, but you're not going to hear the same quality. And so what they want to do is isolate one individual. They want that individual to provide the information, and then they can have another person come in separately at a different time and provide the next piece of information. What we all have to remember is that time is not linear either. So these individuals can view these things at any given time. Say the card for the double-blind experiment says, please view November 15th, 2024, or whatever, November 4th, I think is the election day, to see who the president will be, right? You can do that. You can write it down. You can all view the future at the same time and have them view it at 11:35 a.m. on November 5th for the answer for the president. Right? That's what they can do. But they don't want to do it at the same time. He says there's one paper on the internet that somebody posted in 2017 about the project. He said some of it was true, some of it sounded like a little bit of science fiction, but there's not a lot of information on this thought projection acquisition, because he says there's an element of technology that they use too. It's psychic technology, but it's technology as well. The brain, he says, can do things that you wouldn't imagine. If you can elevate it to 30 to 40% of its capability of the brain capacity, while you're doing whatever you're doing, you can become psychic. He says right now these people are using 12% of their brain, us, me and you. But these experiencers are using 30 to 40% of their brain. Because of this psychic mapping, the brain mapping that they did, the neurologists can watch these individuals with biofeedback, gather the information, give it to them, and say, hey, when you were in this state, when you were in this meditative state, all of these sectors were lighting up green, meaning you were using them, or red. And then if you can get back into that state, you might be able to continue using 30 to 40% of your brain. Maybe we can get it up to 50%. So that you can gather as much information as you can. And of course, the ultimate goal is 100% or above what is it? Above singularity, above unity, right? They want to be above unity, more than 100%. Can you use more than 100% of your brain? I don't know. I guess if you can manipulate somebody else's brain, then you can do that. So he says what they train these experiencers in is that there's techniques used, but they have to be trained for basically a year. They start with the selection process, which is super, super important, and there's a lot of criteria that goes into it. And when they recruit these people, they still go old school. They say they'll give them a piece of paper, and they'll pass them in the hall, and they'll say, look for the man outside of your window at 6:30 a.m. tomorrow with I don't know, the New York Times underneath his arm, underneath his left arm, with a red handkerchief coming out of his pocket. You'll go downstairs at whatever place you're staying at, and you'll go meet that man, and he won't even say anything to you. You follow him. He'll get into a car. You guys will drive off. You get into another car. You'll drive off, and it basically goes like that. It's protecting their project with the ultimate accuracy. And then you go into another facility, and then they'll talk to you. They'll have you sign the NDAs, right? And then they'll take you into another facility down below, maybe 10, 15, 20 stories below ground level, and then they'll start to talk to you about potentially joining the program. So that's what's really fascinating. He says, even Richard Doty, who knows a lot, he's been in the field since the 70s, he says they go through a very, very, very detailed physical examination. You have to wonder if these guys aren't potentially half human, half hybrid. He says they do EKGs, they do heart rhythm tests, brain scans, they do all kinds of things, man. I wouldn't pass the heart rhythm test. They do CAT scans of the brain. They have to map the brain, right, as well, so they know exactly what they're talking about. I wouldn't pass half of these physical tests, man. I'm running on like 50% as it is. And then they start the training. So after they do all these tests, basically it's the same as for an athlete. When athletes go to test for, a sports team, let's say you're on the Bears and the Cincinnati Bengals want you. Well, you got to go do a physical. They got to make sure you're still healthy. You haven't done a physical in a year. Even though you played great last year, you still got to do a physical. And make sure your body's still working. And then they have to clear your mind. They have to clear your mind. And he says there's ways to do it. Technologically, mapping the brain as well, doing these EKGs for your heart, seeing how your heart rhythm interacts with your brain, because the brain controls the heart, and then ultimately controlling the brain waves. Robert Monroe, the godfather of developing remote viewing, basically said if you can control the brain waves, keep them at, I believe it's a theta wave, which is like the most calm wave, then you can control where your body comes out and where your mind goes. Basically, it's putting the body to sleep, and your mind can go wherever it wants to go on the planet. Whatever secret space there is, whatever psychic vacuum it needs to get into, you can get into the target's brain, and now you're inside of their brain, and now you can gather all the information. But you have to go through the ego death. It almost makes me wonder if they don't do like DMT, like Joe Rogan talks about, whereas after you take the DMT, you have this ego death where basically the world's not all about you anymore. You understand the world is one unit, and we're all part of it, and we're all within inside of it. And it's not just my world and me being me and me looking out for me. It's I got to look out for you, and you got to look out for me, and we're all part of this one big cohesive being that is the planet, which is ultimately the solar system and the galaxy and so on and so forth. So he continues to talk about how they can target and vacuum basically the person's brain. They get into the person's brain, they vacuum suction out what they want, and then they get interviewed by their monitor, which is what they had in remote viewing. They have a monitor that talks to the experiencer, and they gather their information in a debriefing. So, but these are very advanced techniques that just don't get out. We really don't have all of the information. But what I do think is interesting is that in a previous episode, we've talked about P3s, the psionic 3 individuals that they've trained to be the intermediary between the government and these UFO alien ships that are coming in. The government can ask them to in interface with the aliens that are controlling the ship, And when they ask them to interface with the ship, the government then can use another weapon to take down the ship, to confuse it into crashing. So they trick these P3s into communicating with the aliens, and the aliens think, oh, they're communicating with us, cool, and then they are able to disrupt the electromagnetic field that the ship is in. You have to wonder now if these guys who are doing this thought projection acquisition stuff, there's a puppet master, right? And the puppet master is up here saying, we want you to implant this thought. But then they might have a whole nother team out there that is manipulating that particular thought as well in the real world. And then you might have another team that's manipulating a guy that's interacting with that person and doing some thought projection acquisition as well. I mean, the level of compartmentalization in the government is so complex that it's almost as if you can't even comprehend it. The people that are in these programs can't comprehend it. That's how deep it is. I mean, you would imagine, I used to work in hospitals. So I know how, hospitals work and how they can be compartmentalized because of patient privacy laws and things like that. You can't give out information here, you can't give out information there, but you understand it. When you get into these programs, they're so compartmentalized, you can't even talk to another unit. You don't even know that unit exists because that unit isn't even in your building. That unit might not even have a building. They might just meet in a CIA safe house somewhere that just looks like a house on a farm. You know what I mean? It's just like the compartmentalization is totally unreal and hard to explain. So when you look at just this one thing that we talked about today, the thought projection acquisition, which is the brand new remote viewing, which is exciting to talk about because remote viewing has been such a huge part of alien history, human alien history, that we have this new program. This new program follows new protocols. What those new protocols are, we're probably not going to find out for an additional 10 to 15 years, if they ever give it out, because we have to wait for it to become declassified. And once it becomes declassified, then people that were in the project can write about it. Until that point, it's going to be quiet. So they're using all kinds of brain mapping technology, which they didn't use back in the day, and they're using all kinds of different methodologies as well. So people who are practicing remote viewing right now might be thinking, oh, I'm doing great, but you're not doing as great as these TPAs are. And behind that, there might be another project. So the rabbit hole just continues to get deeper and deeper and deeper, and it becomes more and more fun. So anyway, I'll let you guys go. I've kept you long enough. I hope you guys have had a fantastic evening, a fantastic day, a fantastic night. I will keep you alert and aware of what's going on Gaia as they bring out more information and as I find out more. Great channel. If you can afford it, great. Go check it out. I don't get a chance to watch enough of these. I'm so busy, but I think I'm going to try to dig back in for a few, and we'll bring it to you. So take care of yourselves physically, spiritually, emotionally. Follow through on your hobbies and your goals and your dreams, and take care of your loved ones. And as always, question the universe. Till next time, guys, take care of yourselves. Go like, follow, share, subscribe. Lockdown Universe is out. Peace.